Well, the Minns government says it's saving koalas. They're delivering on an election promise by creating the so-called Great Koala National Park on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Now, on paper, it sounds totally noble. 176,000 hectares of state forest locked up, linked with existing parks, creating a 500,000 hectare reserve. They're all sort of intertwined. They reckon it'll protect 12,000 koalas, and they warn that without this, koalas will be extinct by 2050. Now, given the fact that they've hung around for about 65 million years, I doubt whether they're going to be extinct by 2050. However, what would I know? But I'll tell you what's heading for extinction right now, which isn't in question, is our timber industry. I hope you don't need timber to purchase in the future because you'll be paying 3 times the price. Now, the park won't be declared until next year, but the government has already slammed the brakes on logging. This is the logging that is totally and utterly sustainable in the state of New South Wales. 6 timber mills shut immediately, gone. 300 workers out of a job, 300 families trying to work out where they're going to get income. And while koalas are getting another $60 million on top of the $80 million already committed, timber workers are offered $6 million lousy dollars, especially job seeker handouts to cope with the wreckage of their livelihood. So here's the question. Where do we get the timber to build our homes? Where do we get the timber to do our extensions? What about schools? What about bridges? What about buildings? From imports. Yep. From countries that don't have the same environmental standards and don't have the same degree of excellence. Marcus Bastiaan is the Director of Forest and Wood Communities, and he joins me right now. Marcus, welcome to the Super Radio Network.
G'day, Chris. Great to join you.
The government says this is about saving koalas, but the area they've declared is so much larger than even the experts recommended. Why?
Well, Chris, you're right about the size, and the scale boggles the mind. You had already 300,000 hectares of national park, which has had a further 176,000 hectares added to it. That's a park now almost the size of 500,000 hectares. The cost, 140 million, as you've noted. But hidden below that is the costs that will go on each year for the New South Wales taxpayer. And, of course, without the forestry industry in that space, managing things like tracks, fire management, silvicultural thinning, and overall the management of all of this land, it's going to cost the taxpayer about $121 per hectare per year to manage. Now, times that by 300,000, you're over 20 million. That's on top of your almost $1 billion that the state is already paying on management of state-based parks. That's not national parks. That's state-based parks. So this decision not only costs the taxpayer an immense amount straight off the bat, but is going to cost the taxpayer ongoing. And these arguments and these ideas of koala, world-class koala attractions, well, New South Wales already has 10 separate sanctuaries and zoos where you can view koalas.
10, do we?
Right up the north coast and through Sydney. You guys have more than any other state. So all of these businesses are already providing that opportunity for tourism. Of course, the biggest problem that's going to be created without forestry management from the timber industry within the park itself will be the risk of mega fires. And we know what Black Saturday looked like, and we know what Ash Wednesday looked like. You saw an 80% decline in natural populations of species like koalas, like the gliders, when these areas burn. And these mega fires are the result, frankly, of too little forestry management. Victoria has a major problem brewing across Gippsland, and now the state Labor government has decided that the same fate goes before for the Great Koala National Park.
This is important to note. Go back on that. So if we retain these timber mills and don't close them down, what it naturally creates fire breaks, does it?
Correct. Well, the logging and the management of the logging by Forestry Corporation, which is the New South Wales government-run body, to manage your native timber industry, has part of their remit to manage the forest, but specifically around fire management. Now, there are a lot of communities up along the North Coast, Central Coast, that will be impacted if that is no longer undertaken by a body. And the beauty of the program is obviously a significant amount of that management is paid for. The overwhelming majority of that management is paid for by the timber industry as they go about their actions of harvesting and replanting, and of course creating and managing tracks and paths through these huge expanses.
So we've got 300 people immediately losing their jobs, and this business about $6 million for timber workers. What a Band-Aid.
I mean, $6 million. Would you rather be a timber worker in New South Wales in 2025 or a koala? I'd rather be a koala, and I think most people in the timber industry feel the same at the moment. 6 million's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. But ultimately, why is government getting involved in private enterprise? Why is government putting big fat black marks through the middle of industries in 2025? We have a housing crisis that seems to dominate our political culture, but we don't have any solutions for it. Well, a core material relevant to the construction of homes is timber, and hardwood is a part of that story.
Of course.
But
what happens now? What happens now? You take it offline. What happens?
What's happening is we're now importing timber from overseas. There is obviously a cost increase associated with that, and our local supply is significantly under pressure. So the quality of the timber of Australian hardwoods that's coming into the industry now is much less than it was, say, 5 years ago, because of what's happened in Victoria, because of what's happening now in New South Wales, because of what's happening nationally to the industry. And so it means, a lineal metre price of an ash or an oak sat at something like $30 for a select grade. You're now looking at $45. I mean, there's a 50% increase in the cost of these materials, and the quality at the same time is going down.
Yeah, so people who have to make decisions about whether they expand their home, their property, or build a new property, or a first home buyer who gets into an estate and wants to build, they are going to think twice when they start adding up the bills.
Well, you're going to see less option in the materials that are used, and ultimately, our quality of our construction projects are reducing for people who are building in the domestic market. But more than that, the places we're now sourcing hardwood from are countries that don't have near close to our environmental protections. So we're now outsourcing our timber supply for our residential and commercial industry. And the places we're now bringing the timber from have little or no protections. We are much better off if we are self-sufficient, when we have the sovereign capacity to supply our construction projects, our furniture makers, our window and door manufacturers. And we do have the ability, and we have the ability through well-managed silviculture and through our current processes. There is far too much power in the Green left within the Australian Labor Party, who quite clearly from this decision have completely wrestled the industrial left. And this is becoming clearer and clearer that the Labor Party today is not for the 1.5 million union members. No. They're for another group.
No, those union members who are listening, and I had a union delegate on the program a little earlier who's turned his back on the Labor Party long ago. If you wanted a party that looked after the union worker, if you wanted a party to look after the union, you're not looking at the right party at the moment, because otherwise there would have been a compromise on this, and they could have made a compromise. Is it still capable of a compromise being made in this process?
Well, Chris, I hope so. I hope.
And what would that look like?
I hope the Labor caucus will go back to the leadership team and say this is bad for the economy. It's bad for industry. Fundamentally, ultimately, it could be very, very bad for residents of the Central and North Coast, and also the local koala population, if we do not manage this forestry properly. I mean, you go back to the comments made before the election by the responsible minister, I think it was Courtney Housos. She specifically said no job losses and new economic opportunities in the forestry industry. They were her words. And what we've got is a region-wide shutdown. Yeah. So if the ALP revisits this, they need to try and find a happy medium between native forestry, which is we've been doing for 200 years in this country, and also if they're interested in protecting and growing